Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to my channel Science to Technology. In today's show, Computer Wednesday, we're going to talk about AMD's new released Radeon RX 7000 series graphics card. So let's dive right into it. Now what is this puppy? Well, this puppy is first launch of RDNA 3 architecture, and the whole grand thing about it is very simple, is that it's the first time they are using chiplet architecture. Now why does that matter? Well, you have to understand, at this point in time everybody talks about AMD in a good light when we are talking about the AMD CPU. Why the heck that happened? Again, AMD took a big risk on chiplet architecture when they first started Ryzen system, and it did work amazingly well. Mark 1 barely was good enough. Mark 2, okay, we're going someplace. Mark 3, yeah, it's very close to Intel. Mark 5, yeah, it bit slapped Intel. So same thing is people are expecting here. And be mindful, it's very good for all of us involved that there is a competition in GPU market. Right now there is no competition in GPU market, and I'm old enough where I remember ATI graphics card, which is sold to AMD in order to like make AMD as a GPU manufacturer. But right now you have to understand, there has never been a time where Nvidia was ever in competition. Nvidia was always like, bro, I'm the king, that's it, I am the king. So that has kind of bloated their ego, and their actions have been like slowly over time. It's like, bro, there is a point where it's like, dude, that's a bit too much ego. And last basically year's pandemic, again, that's our fault, is that when the chip shortage happened, all of us was willing to spend ludicrous amount of money on GPUs, which we never should have done. But again, we did that, enough of us did that it gave Nvidia is like, people are buying $1,000 GPUs, people are buying $1,200 GPUs, people are buying $1,600 GPU. What if I make that GPU, I take all that profit? And they started to do that. That's the whole problem. That's why the MRP of basically Nvidia's current offering went stupid. It's like they saw the market, and the market was, no matter the price, I'll buy it. And that's the worst thing ever, because be mindful, these are GPUs. You're not gonna die without die without them. So it's not that important. But the pricing, people behaved like, oh, this is like next best thing to oxygen, so the price went up. Compared to the fact of like the cheapest graphics card is $1,200 in Nvidia's lineup, this looks downright reasonable. Even though AMD is also exploiting this benefit, as like, hey, if Nvidia is charging up to $1,600, I'm going to charge to let's say $1,000. Even though card manufacturing may be only costing $600, I'll just increase my basically profit. But at this point in time, they look reasonable. They have two offerings, and they have improved a lot, because again, chiplet design was a really godsend for AMD, and it has showing its magic here also. And this time their rasterization performance is tangibly on par with RTX 4080, not 3000 series, 4080. That's mind-bogglingly good, given the fact that price is lower. Rasterization performance. On top of that, it just cannot touch 4090. Let's be very clear about that. If you can afford 4090, you're gonna buy 4090, the end of discussion. But most people can't even afford 4080. For those sort of people, this card offerings are really good. And for the people who want really low cost, these are even better options. And this company is giving you a lot of VRAM. And again, this has been trend with basically AMD and ATI, is that generally give you very large amount of VRAM. So this puppy gives you, the smaller one gives you 20 gigabyte of VRAM running on 320-bit bus. So it's very big RAM, as in like the pool is very big, and the speed, bit depth and speed is also very fast. And in the large one, they give you up to 24 gigabyte. So VRAM, basically if you are running any game that requires a lot of VRAM, it can expand it to large amount of VRAM. This graphics card is like, shut up and take my money. Basically, it can allow it to perform very reasonably well. And given from price to performance ratio, they are actually good. This is the first time where somebody can directly look into AMD's GPU and be like, these are not for poor people. These are a good graphics. Again, not the latest and greatest, cannot touch in the 4090, but these are good card. And some specific game, it can bit slap 4080. So what are the unique selling point of this? Well, everything about this launch was reasonable. Nothing too exaggerant, nothing too wolololo, just reasonable. So reasonable, the size. Again, this they exaggerated in their presentation. It was like 276 mm only went up to 447 mm. Now, why does that matter? Here's the 40 series card. It's too huge, meaning there are cases where you physically cannot fit that in. Many people do not realize how big this is. Like, it's ginormous, it's huge. And not to mention, it's like 3.5 slots. It's huge. And that's just a founder edition. The basically aftermarket ones, some of them are bizarre. Basically, they are idiotically large. too large. And like at some point is like, bro, 40 series should have just come with liquid radiators, like flat out. It just does not make sense to have this much fins. And again, compare that to this, AMD is like, bro, logical, almost exactly like your old card. You can just put right in, it uses the same power plug, does not have a ludicrous power draw, does not require new power pin, that is this 12 volt high power rail. Now be mindful, the port was not properly designed, as in like the data pin that is there. The data pin is supposed to be acting as a, like, you know, fail safe. So that data pin is supposed to be the last thing to be connected once you have fully inserted it. But they did not properly weighted that part. So it can make connection even though it is improperly inserted. Consequent melting connectors. Again, the connectors are melting because you are not inserting it properly. But again, that was the whole point of data pins. They were also acting as a fail-safe layer, where it's like, bro, data pin will be the last thing to make communication. So it can be damn sure that if data pin is making contact, mean is fully inserted. And it will not turn on if data pin is not there. So it's like saving yourself. But again, I'm reasonably sure they will modify this in Mark 2 and Mark 3, where all they have to do is just move that data pin a bit back. So it only makes contact when you fully insert it. That was all the, like, you know, R&D showed us, is that the primary reason plugs are melting is not fully seated. There are some other scenarios, but majority of them are in, melting simply because they're not inserted properly. And data pin is supposed to protect that. Again, minor revision 2 could solve it. But again, if you have to buy a, NVIDIA card, you have to buy either adapter or a whole new power supply that has a new generation of PCI power. That is extra hassle that you may not be willing to buy. And you may be like, does NVIDIA has some next great performance? Well, not that much. Does it have any new generation technology? Yes, it has AV1 encoding and decoding. Now decoding is super easy, most of your equipment already has that. Encoding, not so much. NVIDIA released it. AMD is like, bro, I got you back. AMD also released it, so it's really good. Now for some people, specifically people dealing with unique monitor displays that have USB-C display port, some LG monitors, basically designer people have a lot of monitor that love to use display port 2.1 using USB-C. Design people, not gaming monitors, design monitors, many of them use that because of the Apple ecosystem. So this is like, it does have USB-C port into the graphics card itself. Why does that matter? Because it's a display port 2.1, meaning you can connect a very high resolution, very high bit depth monitor without any stream compression. It's going to give you GG results directly. No cable, no adapter, no third party, nothing. Direct, just plug it in. It also has 27 watt power output, meaning if you're directly connecting that USB-C to your mobile phone, it can actually charge it with reasonable speed. And it also acts as a data transmission of 10 Gbps. I'm not going to try to pronunciate the USB convention, but you get that point. So it's actually useful USB-C port with display port 2.1. For some people, it's like, shut up and take my money. Right there, there's the fact that it has USB-C display port, shut up and take my money. For VR and for design work, it's like, shut up and take my money. What they have changed in terms of their core architecture is that they realized very early on is that if you trace the speed, performance and efficiency boost that you're gaining from increasing the nanometer, basically you're going from 100 nanometer to 50 nanometer to 25 nanometer to 14 nanometers to 7 nanometers, how much performance you are gaining versus how much cost you are going up. Memory is one of those things that does not gain up. Like, there is not that much benefit of going, like, from 100 nanometer to 50 nanometer. Same for, like, 14 nanometer to 10 nanometer. So AMD was like, let's split those things, meaning GPU cores, basically the part that is doing the actual computation, is like, hey, let's use this to make it, let's use that part from the latest and greatest tool that we have, that is 5 nanometer technology. So that is the best GPU they could afford. Then to keep the cost down and yield high, they went to the memory that was in 6 nanometer. Again, I unfortunately wrote millimeter, but the reason memory is made from 6 nanometer is simply because A, it keeps the price down, B, there was not that much benefit. They run all the calculation, of course they must have done testing, and the output was like, memory does not shrink that well. Like, shrinking GPU cores, awesome. Shrinking memory, not that useful. So they're like, hey, if it's not going to yield us any practical result and it's going to increase our cost exponentially, what if we use old technology like 6 nanometer for making memory? Still more than fast enough, still more than competent enough to go toe-to-toe with GPU. And GPU, the main power consumption unit, is going more efficient. So because it's going to 5 nanometer, that's how it has lower cost fundamentally. Compare that to RTX series, that's going to 4 nanometer. Consequence, price went YOLO. Or that's how they are justifying the prices, like, oh, because 4 nanometer is expensive. So what were the benchmarks? Here's the deal. flat out do not have any delusion or even imagination of thinking that 4090 is touchable. Flat out not. 4090 is there, you don't talk about it. It's like that's a different level thing, halo level product as they call it. But it can compete properly with 4080 series. Now if you're like, hey, I want ray tracing, just don't buy this. Like, don't waste your time. Just don't waste your time, because you are looking at compared to 4090, let's not talk about that. Compared to 4080, you are looking at minimum 20% loss or 34% loss in terms of RTX performance. That is directly compared to the top end and low end one. Don't even, like, if RTX is a thing, ray tracing is an important thing for you, you're willing to pay for it, don't look into AMD. Again, it's not bad, and compared to the previous generation, it's actually good, actually useful, but do not expect it to directly bit slap Nvidia. It's not there yet. It's there at least in the same graph, but it's not there yet. Another aspect is rasterization, meaning a majority of the games basically have the option of turning off ray tracing. Why is that? Well, you have to understand, ray tracing is not a technology made by Nvidia. They made a compute for themselves. Ray tracing is a common technology used in Hollywood long ago, like very long ago we have been using it. Why don't we use it in games? Simply because it cannot be computed efficiently enough. So every company was working on it. Microsoft was working on it. That's why many consoles have it. Even though consoles are made by AMD, it still has that ray tracing. You can find a Spider-Man game that has ray tracing, but the moment you turn on the ray tracing, it drops to from 60 FPS to 30 FPS. Ray tracing is an algorithm of doing a thing. Running that algorithm on a dedicated hardware, that's Nvidia's proprietary stuff. And because Nvidia has done that for like fourth time at this point in time, not fourth, third time, Mark 3, they are at Mark 3, they're actually very efficient with it. AMD is just have the second iteration on it. It's not that great. But again, it's there. It's compared to the first one, this is like actually useful. So if you're like, hey, 99% of the game that I play does not have RTX, but that one game I would like to play, AMD is like, bro, I will do my best. And it's actually would be useful. So it's there. And rasterization performance is genuinely good. Like, it can go toe to toe. Like, if you are running Doom Eternal, you are comparing like 242 FPS to 256 FPS. Toe to toe with almost everything. Like, and in some scenarios, like F1 2022, it's 212 FPS versus 197. 197 is from Nvidia. So that's why I said, like, it can actually go toe to toe and sometimes beat it. Like Forza Horizon 5, basically that goes from 134 to 133 in Nvidia. So you can see that, like, there is actually good performance compared to 4080. Basically, if you are comparing only rasterized game, this is like shut up and take my money. Flat out, shut up, take my money, go home. FPS per dollar is tangibly good. Even Cyberpunk, this goes like, if you do not enabling ray tracing, 73 FPS versus 70. Majority of the time, that's what you're gonna get. Flat out, this puppy is a really good equipment for rasterized game performance. If you're not turning RTX, you're gonna have a good time, and your wallet is gonna be very happy about that. What about media encoding, meaning you are doing video rendering, capturing? Basically, this has AV1 encoding. So how good is those things? Actually good. Like, you can do things. You do not have to worry about it. You can actually do things. That's also awesome. Where does it becomes GBH? Basically garbage. The moment you try to do 3D workloads, meaning 3ds Max, Blender, basically any software that flat out says I need CUDA, don't buy this card. Because be mindful, CUDA is like almost became a self-fulfilling prophecy. They released CUDA was good, more NVIDIA graphics got sold because of the CUDA, the more CUDA got supported, next generation even more NVIDIA sold. Like, it became a scenario where OpenCL has almost no support. Like, AMD actually may have to pay other companies like Autodesk. It's like, bro, can you develop a tool that utilize our tool so you can, we can sell our GPUs? That's how bad it is. So if you are in one of those scenarios where you have to basically use these puppies in Blender, 3ds Max, 3D workload, basically, Fusion 360 or SolidWorks, this will be a poor performer. Again, be mindful, it does not mean it's not gonna run. It's gonna be like comparable to 3090. Be mindful, as so far it is directly comparing toe to toe with 4080. Here it will drop down to 3090. So that's the part. That's the ecosystem issue. That's not an issue of like, AMD is not doing good. It's an ecosystem issue. And they have to do a lot of hard work before they reach a point where CUDA core is just as well supported as, basically OpenCL is just as well supported as CUDA. That's the big issue. If you know these things, you know which graphics card you have to buy. If you're like, dude, my software does not use these things, don't worry too much. But if your software uses it, do not buy AMD. Again, be mindful, if you have bought it, you're not going to suffer without it, but you will be like, bro, you can get a bit more oomph out of it if you had bought basically NVIDIA. And in terms of video rendering, encoding, it's actually good. It's like toe to toe, you don't have to think too much about it. Are there any issues in the system? Well, yes. Even though AMD talked a lot about power efficiency, and again, because of the power draw of RTX series, it's kind of becoming a meme. They talked a lot about power draw, and it was a good thing. However, power draw at idle is too goddamn high. And again, be mindful, more than enough people have noticed it. More than enough people have yelled at AMD at this point in time. It's like, because be mindful, if this problem is not sorted, these cards are not something to be bought. Unless you are those sort of person, like you come from office, you start your computer, you play your game, stop your game, turn off the computer, not a big issue. But if your computer is running for very long duration, the power draw is bad. Like background idle power draw could be as bad as 120 watts. It's bad. Now AMD has flat out promised to the whole world that they are working their ass off to fix it, and most likely it's a glitch. It's not something where it's like, oh, there is fundamental flaw. I don't think that is the case, but maybe either they have rushed it or driver optimization has not been done properly, or maybe it's just a side effect of that chiplet design. It may take a bit more oomph to polish that out. But be aware of it. AMD is saying that they're going to fix it. I hope they fix it, because without it, it's a really big issue. But I have hope, faith, because what else I am going to have. So there's that. 3D work tools, flat out, they need AMD port, but again, that's OpenCL versus CUDA kind of situation. AMD really has to like actually spend some money into it. Otherwise, flat out, they'll always be stuck in that chicken and egg scenario. 3D tool flat out prefers CUDA. We can't do much about it. RT cores, again, this is second best. Be mindful, back in the old days, we only used to say first or last. This time we can say second because Intel is trying it. And this kind of gives credence is that GPU development is hard, and NVIDIA may have the best and latest and greatest people working for them. Flat out. Because NVIDIA has been on top for so long. Like, there's never been a time where it's like, dude, NVIDIA is not good. Like, never been a time. This is the first time where it's like, okay, at least same card can compete against same card. That's the first time this is happening properly. Like, there have been some cards where, like, almost good. This is like coming very close to it. And be mindful, if companies like Intel is trying to make GPUs and they are pooping themselves, you have to understand it's very difficult. And Intel has learned the hard way that they are like, dude, I'm not even a target on high flagship series. They're like, dude, mid-range, that's the way battleground is. Now, from a company point of view, it's a very, two-pronged attack. First, it helps people buy their card. And again, more people buying their card equals more R&D they can do on the cards. Without it, it's just useless. And again, they can't compete with NVIDIA. So they're like, okay, let us take care of the mid-range. Let's, sort out our structure. Let's figure out Arc 2, Arc 3. I'm hopeful by Arc 3, they should be good. I'm genuinely hopeful AMD can actually, fix minor issues that they have. And if they actually do it, and if they keep polishing it, because they have really good reputation of fixing GPUs, like boosting the GPU's performance, or depending how you see it, actually extracting performance out of it, that was already there. You are just, basically your GPU hardware manufacturer is running ahead and your driver team is lagging behind by a year. So that's depending how you want to see it. So RT is second best option at this point in time, and driver does need some elbow grease. Like, this sort of power issue should not have happened. But again, it does have USB-C. For some people, it's like, shut up and take my money. Right there, it has USB-C, shut up and take my money. And normal power plugs. And normal size also. So should you buy it or not? Well, at this point in time, if you buy AMD, it's not going to be a bad option. Like, it's first time in very long time where it's like, I have a lot of ATI cards, so I know what I'm talking about. It's like, first time it's not like, I'm poor, I'm buying AMD. It's like, no, AMD is a sensible option. In some games, it actually has higher FPS. So it is actually a good option. And if you are playing games like, your bread and butter is the games that are rasterization only, you're like, shut up and take my money. And it does have more VRAM that allows games to expand a bit more. And especially if you are someone who's doing a lot of mod work, awesome, shut up and take my money. So it's really good. However, for majority of people, I would say still apply some brakes. Wait for mid-range cards, basically 6-800 series kind of card, 3760 series of cards. Basically wait for mid-range, basically 4070, 4060 and 7800 and 7700s. Wait for those cards. Those cards may be far more closer to what we can actually afford and does not burn a hole in our power bill or bank balance. Hopefully, I'm hoping for that. And one thing you have to understand, do not compare your card to the flagship. Do not do that. It will only give you blood pressure. Don't compare it to 4090, compare it to your old card. Meaning, whenever I'm going to buy a card, all it has to do is be better than my GTX 1070. That's it. Unfortunately, NVIDIA series, they really don't like to put VRAM. I need the AV1 encoding because, again, I'm a YouTuber. I do need that. But other than that, VRAM wise, I don't need other than that. And I'm pretty sure any card that I'm gonna buy at this point, be it AMD, be it Nvidia, is gonna be tangibly better than basically GTX 1070. I know that for a fact. So I'm not gonna be sad. But if I compare to 4090, I'm gonna be miserable. So be very mindful of that. And you will forget that you have a AMD GPU, and that's a very good thing. If you have a good component, you don't think too much about it. You don't think which SSD you have, you don't think which processor you have. Just have a computer, you turn it on, you do your thing, and you go home. That's the whole point of it. Now, right now, any people who are trying with Intel Arc, they don't have this luxury. They are constantly aware, oh, I have Intel Arc, that's why I have this issue. It's not that good for them. But for AMD, it's actually good. And if they keep polishing the driver, they can reach a point where it's like you don't think too much about it. So the money that you will save on the GPU, you may feel very miserable in future years, like, hey, I should have bought that. I would urge you, one way of saving that remorse is that spend that money on other part. For example, these GPUs are high-end GPUs. They require very high-end processor. Do not pile these puppies up with a weak processor and you're like, dude, why the heck my GPU is not working? Like, I have that. I am literally running FX8350 bulldozer, AMD bulldozer processor with 1070. Be mindful, though those have been bought years apart, but that was the issue. I have a very good graphics card, but my processor is like, can't feed it fast enough. GPU is like, I'm not going to give you very high FPS. It can do very high FPS, but it can't, simply because CPU is the bottleneck. So do not fall for those sort of traps. It's like, I'm going to spend every single dollar I have, every single rupee I have for the GPU. Dude, balance it out properly. And if you're saving your money by buying AMD, don't just be like, okay, I saved $200. Again, if that's a hard line limit, you're not going to be miserable. If it's like, should I buy this or that? You can take that $200, put it in a CPU, you will be much better off. You can put that in getting a higher quality SSD or larger capacity SSD, and you will be far happier. So these are our options, and I would urge you, for majority of you, just wait till March, I think, when 4070 and 4060 starts to come into market, 7800 and 7700 comes to market. Those should really help us figure out what to do. So this was my presentation on basically new series of AMD Radeon RX 7000 series. Hopefully you have liked it, learned from it. In that case, please click the like button, share it amongst your friends. That will help me a lot. If you didn't like it, didn't enjoy it, I urge you to press dislike. Press it twice to show me extra disappointment. Please leave a comment because I do try to reply to all of them. Subscribe, press the bell icon if you're free, and as always, thanks for watching.